What does Billie Bust Up hide off camera in Barnaby's manor? Billie Bust Up is a musical 3D platformer where you play as Billy the Goat, and in one area in particular, the game gets a bit spooky. Barnaby's manor is a lair of death where the dead are invited to party. But what can we find out of bounds? And how does the Barnaby boss fight actually work when he's chasing you down? Well, we have quite a bit to cover, so I hope you enjoy this spooky dive into Billie Bust Up. So very quickly, I'm going to briefly recap the series of events that transpired here so far. So Billy and Oscar arrive at this haunted estate by climbing out of a grave. Barnaby's manor is in the distance, and the duo must make their way through the graveyard to eventually go inside. Once inside, there are two paths you can take. The path to the right leads to a study with a treasure chest, and some iconic mashups of characters and photos. If we take a left, we'll find ourselves in a room with giant books we must climb to reach the gem of reality, Barnaby's treasure. But not before Barnaby stops us out of the kindness of his heart to try to kill us, so we can go to his party. And thus, the chase scene begins as the player runs away from Barnaby while dodging all sorts of deadly things. Eventually, we break out of the mansion and tumble into the Family Guy death pose as the scene comes to an end. Recap aside, let's move on to some behind-the-scenes stuff. So when we first load in outside the manor, we of course have that grave I mentioned earlier. So how does a character actually climb out of this? Well, beneath the ground, we can see how this is pulled off. Billy is standing under this area, and her ears are facing straight up. Because they have physics simulation applied to them, her ears are freaking out. This is due to them being placed inside the ground, which has collision. Our character stays frozen like this until we hit some buttons, which start the breakout animation. And, Billy looks like she has seen some better days. Her arm is bent backwards and her head is shoved downward as she reaches through the ground. Her second arm then extends behind her head as well, and it truly looks uncomfortable. Her head then moves upwards before the animation skips over to her head emerging. Side note, I really love how the faces are done in this game. Adding expressions as textures really makes the whole thing pop stylistically, almost like a merging of new and old animation styles. If we're to take a look at this section of the map as a whole, or at least this part that was provided early, we can see that the mountains are quite far away. The skybox looks like a beautiful painting though. We'll see that Barnaby's tower is just floating right behind the manor too. If we disable the post-processing effects in the game, we'll see that there are some things out of bounds. Aristotle, the axolotl, can be found beneath the map on some standard white box flooring. There's also another character down here too, but I'm unsure of who they are. Let me know in the comments if you recognize them. Now the collision in this area is not final, so it is possible with some maneuvering to break out the level boundaries, like jumping over the fence and going behind Barnaby's manor. And you'll notice that inside the manor doesn't exist, and that's because there's a secret to how it actually works, which I'll get to shortly. Falling off the map deals damage, but warps us back out front. We can avoid this death barrier though if we swap over to controlling Oscar. Oscar isn't meant to be played in this earlier version to my understanding, so the screen is a bit glitchy. However, with Oscar, we can jump down below and walk around that white box area. This makes it so Oscar is no longer with us up above. Trying to jump down below to find him again will of course void us out. But unfortunately, Oscar doesn't respawn. Out of bounds, we can find some objects though, like this floating wall and a flat-looking island. Let's head inside that manor now. So although the player can't tell once they enter the manor, they are actually being teleported elsewhere. You'll notice it right here as you pass through this doorway. There's a slight change in lighting that occurs, and it seems almost seamless to the player. If we were to zoom out at this point, we'll find that we are now beneath the castle and far under the map. Back up top we can find our character though, and the floor we stepped on is placeholder whiteboxing. Now I'm not 100% sure how this is pulled off in this particular instance, but down below our character also exists. So it's kind of like we were duplicated or projected in here. Downstairs, we can take the camera into Barnaby's room and get a closer look at things. We can also take a look in the other room as well and find a duplicate portrait amongst others. We have the Snatcher from Ahead in Time in one photo, and on the same wall, we can find Wally from Welcome Home. On the opposite wall, we can find Barnaby feeding a monster dog named Kira from the indie animated series Far-Fetched. We're going to head to Barnaby now, so we climb up top towards the gem and a cutscene starts to play out. However, it's important to note that this cutscene doesn't play out in-engine. It's actually just a video file, so we aren't able to check out this scene from different angles. However, the chase scene is of course not a video file, so let's hop on over to that now. So immediately upon starting up this chase, I really want to get a good look at Barnaby. So his model has a perpetual purple outline rendered around it, and his eyes are sprites. However, it's what's beyond that darkness behind him that's super interesting. First thing to note is that because of the render bounds on Barnaby, his model will unload if we look away from its center point. This is problematic because he's super long, but if we were to look beneath the ground, we'll actually find Barnaby's T-posing body. It's hard to see it all in one shot because it keeps unloading, but if we get our camera just right, we'll see Barnaby's T-posing body that will eventually be dragged through the level. I don't know what I expected, but I suppose this totally makes sense. Throughout this chase sequence, there are a lot of corridors that Barnaby's hands come out of. And as you can see, the hands are always present there. They're just out of bounds and activate once the timing is right. Flying through this huge hallway makes you realize just how long it actually is. This stage goes on for quite a long time. Towards the end of the level, we come across a book with a goat's recipe on it. You can't really spend a lot of time looking at this, but I want to take a look at the filler text. I'll read through it quickly while showing off some out-of-bounds B-roll stuff. It reads, quote, "Take the magic goat and firmly grasp it, using a handy kitchen knife to really dig into that chest cavity. Just really get in there and carve out that delicious heart. Carefully set that bad boy aside and get the rest of the ingredients ready. Chop the rest of the goat into tiny little cubes. Look at them, they're so cute. And then, I don't know, put the broth in a pot and throw in whatever you like. Onions, garlic, tomatoes, some rocks, maybe a weasel or two, some lettuce. I don't know, don't look at me. I'm not a chef. I'm not even trained. Why are you still reading this? You did the important part. Do whatever you want. Dying is a bonus. Hi, Ma." End quote. I love that they put so much character into this excerpt that no players will ever be able to read. It's quite charming. At another part of the chase, we can see tons of Barnaby hands lined up just ready to attack the player when given the chance. And out in the void, near the start of the level, we'll find a matching pair of hands sitting out here far away from the stage. I'm pretty sure that these are the arms they use for the dying animation that then cover the screen. If you do Barnaby's manor first and start the boss fight through that instead of choosing it through the menu, we can find the manor still loaded in the background out of bounds. I didn't realize it was all on the same map at first, which was pretty surprising. Beneath the stage, we can now find a glitchy projection panel that gives us a fly eye effect. If we break the game a bit, we can actually get Barnaby stuck during the chase and he'll no longer pursue us. This is interesting because the song still plays, and every encounter that is timed to the music can still take effect. Like the crocodile spawning at the wrong part and basically never leaving you alone. The world will start to unload behind us as well, and the camera rotation will take place based on the song's timing, no matter where you are on the map. If we head back to where Barnaby was, we'll find him gone, but because the song's time has run out, the level will actually end and the final cutscene will play. We'll experiment with this in just a second. But let's look at some level sections up close. Here are the lobsters that are swimming in the water. We also have those same lobsters, cooked and on dinner plates for the Boo minions. And here are how the ghosts on bikes work. They ride down these hallways and eventually warp across to repeat their actions. In the background, we can see Barnaby's hands ready to attack too. So you normally can't see this, but there's a gravestone you run towards in the chase scene before you fall on down. And if we view it from the wrong angle, you'll see it's the same gravestone that we emerge out of. It has text on it, and they simply flipped it around so the camera can never see it. If the pacing for this song is thrown off at all, the sequence after the gravestone can be broken. And instead, Billy will follow the level and keep falling until the song ends. We can restart the level and increase the scale of Billy, but her ears will stay the same size. It's a bit harder to dodge stuff when you're large and in charge, but I tried my best for a while. For some reason, large Billy eventually just gets stuck on an invisible barrier until you get insta-killed by Barnaby. Back to where we were before, after you slide down this ramp, if we check on Barnaby, we can see he will stop moving on the other side of this door and sit here. Eventually, he will warp down below, but with a slight sequence break, we can skip this part and fall out of bounds. We'll see Barnaby's shadow closing in on us, but he can't kill us due to his hitbox only being in bounds. For reference, we're stuck behind the wall where that book normally is at. We can jump further out of bounds and land on this giant piece of flooring way beneath the map, and at this point, we're free to move around until the song ends. Rewinding time again, once we step into that cage, it sort of looks like it is an elevator that is moving. But in reality, we're staying put and the environment around us is the one moving. The lava simply rises up, mimicking the lyrics as if we're in an active volcano. We eventually fall through all of this into a bowl of red soup. When we land in that soup, Barnaby spawns behind us, but the perspective makes it a bit harder to see what's in the soup. Taking a look inside the soup, we can find a few objects under the surface that can never be seen under normal circumstances. So the end of the chase leads to a window you normally jump out of, but we can see the map goes way beyond it for quite a ways if you were to jump out of here. The problem being that the game's timing never lets this happen, unless we mess with things. So if we desync the song again, it will buy us a little more time. And as you can see, we can run past the camera and continue on for quite a ways until the song concludes and the chase is complete. And just like last time, this cutscene is a video file, so unfortunately we can't check it out from different perspectives. Gotta love that Family Guy death pose though. And with that, we've come to the end of the Barnaby chase. I hope you enjoyed this look behind the scenes of the Billie Bust Up demo. And hey, if you're interested, I just released the newest trailer for my game, Zardy's Maze 2, if you're up for some more spooky content. Regardless, I hope you have a good one.